Welcome in, BBL Supercoaches. Round 4 is in the books, and let's go through and work out our trades together heading into round 5. We're on a single. All the teams have the single. Round 6, we will have the Thunder double, and round 8, we'll have the Hobart double. So some of you might be looking at just loading up on Thunder players this week. That'd be a really solid strategy. The only thing to think about with that is, are you going to want 6 Thunder players in your team come next week? Let's just say you have none right now. You go 3 and 3. Is there good enough players in that Thunder team for you to have 6 of them to then maybe move on from 1 or 2 the next week? Because you'll probably have an injury. You'll probably have a really terrible break even or someone losing cash that you might want to sell as well. So it's a situation where you might want to just look at single game players from other teams that have a better role right now or in form or whatever it is like that to get you to a better score. We saw this week I attacked the doubles and unfortunately didn't work out. I did gain 62 spots, but that pales in comparison to what it probably should have been for the amount of double players that I had in my team. A lot of the guys out there that actually didn't attack the doubles as much and had some luck with some single players actually outscored me and outscored a lot of people by a lot. For example, Mr. Brainball, which we'll get to right now, he ended up scoring 1150th and getting the fourth highest score of the round, I should say. And he went all the way from like 1700 all the way into 147. So yeah, he was basically at 1800 there and picked up 1139 with some good single game players. And he actually didn't have any luck with Glenn Maxwell either. Not only getting to bat at the end. Played Harper in his wicketkeeper. On the single there, he had Overton as captain. He did have Lynn with myself, which was a big win, but he had Bartlett. He ended up grabbing Brennan Doggett as a bit of a pod play, which was a massive call, but played Connolly, had Finn Allen, had a few of those guys that were on singles that did a good job. Johnson with 51 as well, compared to myself having guys like Liam Scott and the like. He didn't even play Stoinis, so there was some unluckiness in there, and there was some nice luck on just picking single guys as well. So while we're here, let's check out the Podmasters League, and Kane sitting in 22nd spot after a nice improvement based on pushing out to 58th last week from 6th. Andrew Langley can't help himself, getting 109th now in a really nice spot heading into the second half of the season. Now we are almost halfway, round 5 with 9 rounds to go, and pushes himself almost 140 points, 135 points behind 22nd in Kane. So it shows there's a bit of work to do if you are sitting around that 100 mark, but easy enough to have a good week like we saw with Nath there, and get 1100 and beat these guys by a couple hundred and just absolutely overtake them. So that's the potential that can happen there. So a few guys in there. Tim Williams at 148, well done to him for a nice week at 962. But yeah, the 833 for myself puts me in 15th now. And a 678, it's nothing to sneeze at, but it's, hope for a little bit better the last few weeks, and it just hasn't worked out as well as we would have hoped, I should say, in round 2 and round 4. With, I suppose that coincides with the doubles from Adelaide in the end. So, yeah, not super ideal. Good round 1 and round 3, and not so good in round 2 and 4. But it is what it is. That is how it works. Let's just have a quick look at the JBFA crews while we're here. 1 and 2, so I'm currently sitting in 3rd there. We've got Alyssa and Ram in 1st and 2nd. And I do believe in the JBFA overall, there's a good little spot there, I think. Yeah, JBFA overall. We've got Jack, who's actually in 13th spot, and then Mitchell in 53rd. So a cracking start from those guys. Adam at 315. Aditha there. Steve, Lockie, I imagine that's Mr. Scoop. We'll have to see. At 437, Luca, Alyssa, Sam, and Ram all ahead of me there in good spots. So exciting to see from the JBFA crew. But let's move into just a quick one on the total rankings as well. So you've got Banjo Danjo at 4,552, which is a bit over 100 points ahead of Kane in 22nd there. 4,382. So 170 points actually. And let's have a look at the squad while we're here, just so we can wallow in the defeats. But we've got, he moved Doran down to get Turner's points, which was solid. He picked up a 958, so that included Thornton, Richardson. Was nothing crazy, to be fair. Just picked up the Turner score, which was good. Bethel was 69. I suppose, yeah, not having that zero from the zero from Scott would be helpful. But he had Paul Walters score that actually came out and played Stoinis. So, yeah, it wasn't too crazy to get that score. And, yeah, well done to him not having too many strikers players and end up holding on to Matt Short. So that's pretty interesting how that one's played out for Banjo Danjo. But, yeah, definitely a team that you could try and chase down for sure. That is for sure. But anyway, let's move into looking at some of the trades. And let's go straight into the wicket-keeping position. So, the two teams that have doubles remaining, we're looking at Thunder and we're looking at Hobart. So Sam Billings comes into our thoughts there at 153k though after that massive 70 the other week. He's taken a lot of catches too in recent history. He's 153k, and when you're batting sort of 4 and 5 in that realm there, it can be hard to get the role sometimes, especially when you've got someone like David Warner doing really well. So 153k for a keeper, it feels tough to go early on him, to be honest with you. With that 40, his break even will be at a normal rate this week. So not someone I think you have to rush out and get. I think you could easily play a Philippi. See if it might be hard just based on the break even, but Philippi's sitting there fine. You could hold one of these guys and just roll with it for a week, or you could go to a Sam Billings, but just doesn't feel like a great selection this week on the single as a bat only guy or keep a bat only. Then you've got guys that you probably would sell. Obviously, Duckett, I think, at 170 is a bit expensive now for a guy that's coming off a 0, which will just mean his break-even will be a tad higher there. But people you can look at is obviously Ben McDermott at 131. He picks up a 44 this week after the good score the week prior. And is at a reasonable price, to be fair, with a double to come. 20 odd K cheaper than Billings. Bats higher in the order. I think he's a really solid one to look at. Cam Bancroft at 120 is as a bat-only guy, I don't like it as much. You've got Shea Hope picking up at 4, so he's only had the one really good week so far at 119k. You could bank on him turning his form around and getting back to crushing it there in what we've seen him do for his country and in other T20 leagues. So he's an interesting one at 119. We do lose Tom Banton. He's gone now at 92k. So Tom Alsop will come in. I don't think he's a pick at this point. Likely to bat sort of potentially a 4 or 5. Could open. We'll see how that one plays out. But Maxi Bryan played well the other day, didn't he? And then Matty Wade at 124. Just doesn't look himself. I don't know what it is so far. He's obviously played a couple of games, coming off injury. There's a few things there, but he did score a few runs. Just looked very scratchy. So that's the keeping position. Bit of an awkward one. Yeah, you can see how it all plays out, to be fair. Moving into the batsmen. God, I just have to say, Will Sutherland was very, very disappointing after, if you're looking at the scores, like I didn't own him at the start, right? The first 2 weeks, people captained him and all that sort of stuff, and he goes 99, 118, and then the next game he gets 63, and you're like, oh, yeah, 63, that sounds about right. And then you buy him and he goes 42, 24. That's how it works, isn't it? Of course, that's how it works. I was only hoping for 60. I wasn't hoping for the hundreds, but yeah, just of course how it works. So you come out and people decide to captain him in round 1 and he goes bonkers, and you don't captain him in this week and he only picks up the 66. It's just funny how the game works, but that is Mr. Sutherland. Let's have a look at some trades. And firstly, I just do want to smile after last night. Watching Chris Lynn as an owner absolutely pump him everywhere was exactly what I had hoped for and assumed would happen at some point, that he would go off. And it was great to watch last night, that's for sure. And stops any really, really big price drops. And then we can keep him now for another week as a guy that has a tremendous amount of upside. Okay, let's quickly look at the Thunder and the Hobart players first in the batting position, and then move on to some other guys you might want to look at. But as you can kind of look at through my side, Walt had 23. Sutherland is an all-rounder, but he got 66 there. You had the bat-only guys of Weatherald get 21. You had Walter in there at 23. So it does look like the bowling continues to be the dominant section there. Yeah, obviously depends where you've got your player, but Stoinis down there in the bowling as well. But Fergus was the tough one. I think he has to be sold. 1 over. Ugh, gross. Dwarf's just got unlucky with his 19, obviously. But yeah, very happy with the trade-in of Rogers. Having Thornton was great. Zampa with 103 was a real big improvement. And having Lynn there was a big win for my side. Wasn't able to emergency Ashton Turner in as well, I decided to hold on to Jack Edwards instead of keeping Tom Curran and looping in that scenario. I was like, I'll just back Paul Walter with the good roll. He just doesn't look himself, does he, this year? So, yeah, lost 40 points there, unfortunately. But, yes, moving on to the batting slot. Mitch Owens at 147 now. It's very expensive, but dual position, it's something you can look at, but is there potentially cheaper guys that you could look at in this side first and then get Mitch Owen for a higher price guy in round 8? It's probably the correct play. Dan Sams at 152k is averaging 51.5, so you could look at him a week early. The other guy, and probably the one you might want to look at, is the guys with the lower break even. So Dave Warner batted incredibly well the other day. I was very, very impressed with how he navigated that innings. He does come up against Perth this week, though. We know that they dismantled their opponent last week in the Adelaide Strikers, but Warner is good enough to battle any opponent, obviously. But 133k for him. He'll be up, if he scores like a 50 this week, he'll be up at 150 and will be harder to buy in their double next week, so keep an eye on him. We mentioned McDermott. Nikhil Chowdhury at 105k. He's come off a couple of games now where he's bowled a decent amount of overs, picked up 20 runs and 42 last game. He got all the way up to close to 150 last year, even higher at certain points. So he has that upside as a batting all-rounder, batting at 5 and then bowling 3 overs. That could be, it was at one point last year one of the better roles in the game, and he's definitely someone that you should have your eye on at 105k with the dual, that you can move around, you can play on singles, you can loop all the way up until their round 8 double. So he's an interesting one for sure. Davies at 80k. If you wanted to go cheaper, he's there. Don't really like it just as a bat-only guy, but I definitely think he could be picked if you wanted to go for someone with upside. That's for sure. Tim David, I almost picked last week before the Matt Short drama came in, so I moved on from David, and I am happy with that overall. It did allow me to get Lynn, who I did want, in the end. But David 63, Caleb Jewell didn't play last week. We got Shafane Rutherford at 11. He did open. He just doesn't look good over here, surprisingly, after how much form he's in. How he can come over and struggle straight away is pretty wild. So that's the bat only guys for those two clubs, and then we'll just quickly move to the bowlers as well, just to give you a bit of an idea. Pretend we are trading out Big Ferg. And for the bowlers, Lockie Ferguson, 159k. I think you do have to go for Wes before him. It's 13k difference now. Wes had a cracking 2 games, but again, you probably going to want to have him next week, and then potentially you could sell after their double. So in that case, he could be very, very expensive, and whereas Lockie's coming off at 10, you could buy next week at a cheaper price. So have a look at that. For those guys, Ellis, you have to buy a bit later, had illness. Chris Green at 129 is an interesting bowl-only player there, averaging 50 for the season, along with Riley Meredith at 126. Both those guys in a reasonable price bracket that could work for you, and scoring solidly enough, 62 and 61. And then Jordan with 114. So I was looking at him last week as well. I did have enough cash to jump on him potentially this week if I did trade a different player than what I ended up doing. But 105k it was for Jordan. I thought that was very, very cheap for what he can produce, and he can get up to that 148 as well, like we saw with Chowdhury. And the bowl only is a little bit annoying, but coming off a 114, you're probably going to want him. There's a few guys that you're probably going to want come the round 8 double from the Hobart Hurricanes, and these all-rounder guys, Jordan and Chowdhury, they're at a really reasonable price right now, and they can score good week to week. They can score well week to week, I should say. And this was a solid one at that. So they're very, very interesting. And then Stanlake and Wakar, both those guys, 63 and 51, had a really solid outing. Wakar, I think he bowled well enough to earn a spot in your side potentially if you need someone at that price point for a team, from a team that has a double coming up, then I think that works well. And then you've got Tom Andrews, comes in at 53k. Tanvir, there's some worries that he might be out for the season, but I think we do have to wait until we find out a little bit more info before we do completely make that decision, if I'm honest, at this point. So let's go back to the batters now, but exclude the Thunder and the Hobart Hurricanes. So let's go through those sides now. I think Adelaide, there's only one guy in the bowling slot you might want to look at, and that's Brendan Doggett, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's go through all those guys. Adelaide batting wise, I think we leave it out. You could look at Chris Lynn, but it's going to be so hit and miss for sure. So we exclude him. And we're looking at averages to start. Dan Lawrence at 170k now. It's very expensive for an all-rounder. Opening the bat and bowling a few overs is pretty nice, obviously, but he's actually in a way better spot than Maxwell right now, which is wild. So Maxi, he's getting cheap now. That's the wild thing about that. But Sutherland there, hold or sell. I understand both. He still has a great role. He picked up 18 off 11. He just needed that few extra runs to get that bonus. And is getting a little bit unlucky. He could have had Chris Lynn out a couple of times last night. So he got luck in the first few games. Didn't get luck last night. So does he turn that around? He probably does. Cooper Connolly, he's impressing me every single game. Man, he's going to be a really important player for Australia, I think, going forward, whether it's in the white ball stuff or eventually in Test cricket once he scores a few more runs in Shield. But he's a very impressive batsman, has super talent in striking the ball, but he also has the temperament. He's able to run hard between wickets. Him and Ashton Turner together. Man, I've absolutely loved watching Ashton Turner this year in the Big Bash. He's probably been my favourite player to watch, just from a straight up cricketing mindset, skill, running between wickets, effort, smarts, just all of it together. I think Ashton Turner is the winner of this year's Big Bash so far, along with Cooper Connolly. So two guys from the same team is absolutely wild how that one plays out, but it's so impressive. For Turner to be, total points wise, or average points rise up at 5th, well, let's say he's 4th based on the bat only guys from these teams, is so impressive how that one's played out. And then McSweeney as well, he's come in and did a great job, but he got a pretty good nut in that game on the weekend there. So Ashton Turner, I think the way he's playing at 130k, you could look at that and go, well, he's probably a sell just on price, but he's playing so well, and I think his lowest score this season's like 45 or something. So he's been super consistent. Yeah, it's very important and in great form, and a guy that is well aware of his game and how it goes. So very, very impressive on that front. Stoinis, could you buy him back in? Of course he bowled. Of course he bowled on the weekend. But great to see. Lovely sound on the weekend. A couple of days ago. 121k, bad bowl. Very happy to still be owning him. If you did sell, I do understand trying to bring him back in. Single games the rest of the way, but a little bit of confidence with the bat there, and then did bowl really well also. Jack Edwards, if you did sell at 141, he's back down to 6 with the bat, but he's bowling death overs with Sean Abbott out. So very, very interesting play, that one. Max Bryant coming off a really good score there, 112. I couldn't buy him myself now. Very similar to Josh Brown, coming off good scores, but bat-only guys, we've seen that it's very, very hit and miss. It's very, very difficult. Jake Weatherald has looked incredible that game one, got injured, and he hasn't looked anywhere near the same in those 2 games since. So very frustrating on that front. Matt Renshaw at 100k, could easily sell, could easily hold at that price point on that front. Maxwell at 182, not bowling, batting 6. It's so gross. What are they doing? They didn't need him, obviously, but yeah, for him to be batting 6 when you've got like Tom Rogers and Sam Harper and these guys, it's really wild how that one plays out. Do you hold him at 182 now? You can do, and hope for the best. You could also sell. It's a tough one, I expect. It's just the bowling. Each and every week, it's so different, unfortunately. Laurie Evans, a much better week for him, 96, with a good score in that first one. And then on Reeks in there, Silky. Walter's a frustrating one. At 135 now, he's going to keep losing cash. Still has a decent role, but every time he bats, couple of times he's batted, he's got 22 and got the economy rate, 5 points or just missed it the last 2 games, and then he's only got a 51 to 23 after scoring 22 in both games. It's super frustrating because the bowling's just not there. Right now, he's just bowling a lot of slow balls into the wicket, and they're just sitting on it and waiting for it. The guys that are taking wickets right now are blasting players out. They're nicking them. They're bowling quick, and then they're doing the slow ball. Seems to be working best at that point. And Jacob Bethel is probably the only one of 2 here at the bottom to have a look at, just because he did bowl 3 overs in the end, and Fergus didn't. So if that was to be the case, we don't know if that's to be the case, that he's going to bowl more overs. But if he is to, that was it. Marvel, where they might be playing a few more games there, or they will be playing a few more games there, he becomes very interesting on that front if he is to be batting 4 and bowling. Not setting the world alight with the bat right now, but that could come at 101k if you wanted to take a punt on him. Also, potentially taking a punt on Finn Allen at 84k. We know now what he can do if you haven't seen him bat before. With that 85, that 50 off 23 rocks, looked incredible. Hits the ball so hard, it's wild. Him at 84k, he's at his bottom price now. He even lost money with an 85 this week. He could come out and do really well. He's had no catches yet either. He did get a run out last game, but him at rock bottom price can be a guy that can come out and do the business for you and help you get really nice emergency scores or get you good scores on a week-to-week basis. He has had a run of his poor scores, but it could be the end of that run of bad scores. We don't know at this point. So, all right, let's move on. We did mention Brendan Doggett. He came off a tremendous double, 170 across his 2. He batted incredibly well in the first one and bowled great in both. 1 for 17 in that second game after a couple of wickets in the first one. So, very, very impressive. Great fielder. Got some catches as well. So, Doggett, at his very reasonable price, under 100k, is someone that does become very, very interesting. I'll just add them in. What's his price in the end? 102k after 178. So he's got a tremendously low break even, obviously, after those 2 great games, and looked incredible. He'll keep his spot. So he's someone that I think you might want to have a look at for sure on the single if you didn't want to get ahead of getting too many extra doubles guys from a Thunder or Hurricanes setup. For the other bowlers, how good's Jackson Bird been? A double, 140 for him in this game with a 4-fer. Probably a little bit too expensive to go bowl only. Same with, to go single game only. Same with Spencer Johnson. Same with Barrendorf. If you do own them, then happy days. Just keep holding on because they'll keep getting more expensive, and Barrendorf just keeps getting better and better. Connolly mentioned you could potentially grab him. Dwarshus, a tough one for him at 19. Picked up a catch and 10 dot balls and the 9 runs. So hopefully for him it's a better one like we've seen all year. Bartlett, if you got him, you hold on now. I think after that incredible score. Richardson, same deal. Stoinis could get back in, like we said. There's lots of dual position guys, so you might want to move one of them or a couple of them to the batsman slot, just because there are so many options that you can purchase in this setup. Ashton Agar looks like he'll be okay to go. So if you do own him, I understand selling. After he went off and didn't bowl any more overs, but thankfully still picked up the catch and the couple of dot balls. Joel Paris coming in along with Steckty and doing pretty well on that front. And we have to say, Lance Morris, seriously, a little bit of a rant here. So I buy him after round 1. Oh yeah, he's got a double, beautiful. He gets 3 in the first game, bowls absolute pump, and then doesn't play the second game, and then he's gone 54 and 74. Back to his consistent scoring and bowled rockets in that last game. Of course, that's how it works, isn't it? Luck in this game is absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Samamir, no. Killer Scene just hasn't bowled great, to be honest with you, and he was pretty annoyed with himself at the end of that 4th over the other day, so not one. He'll turn it around, but not one to buy, I don't think, unless he maybe one more week of a low score, and then he gets into sort of 130 territory, and that becomes interesting for sure. A lot of DMPs from the average guys, so there you go. A lot of bowling slot, nothing special from the single guys. So yeah, it's a mixture of the couple of Hobart guys that are a little bit cheaper, Riley Meredith to go along with the 2 spinners, the 2 all-rounders, I should say. And then from Thunder, you've got a few guys like Warner, I think, like Wes Agar, that are probably buys. But yeah, if you're just looking at the Thunder team straight up, if we're looking to buy them next week, how many of these guys would you actually want on your side? There's probably a few in the bowling slot, given Agar, Ferguson, Sams, Green, potentially a Tom Andrews. Batting slot, it's probably only Warner at this point, I should say. Let's go to the batting slot for Thunder. Billings potentially is a wicketkeeper, and then it's probably David Warner. So there is 6 guys. Are you gonna buy them all, or is that going to be a bit of an overload? Do you go for 4? Potentially. Do you grab a couple of Hobart guys now and then potentially grab 1 or 2 Hobart guys in that point and just continue to build up good single game guys? That's probably the right play. And then the other thing you've got to think of, obviously, is the emergencies and being able to loop at certain points. So Harry Menenti does have the best role for that from Adelaide. If Liam Scott has been dropped and continues to stay out of the side now with Doggett in the side, I think it's a good chance. he becomes a my looper, which is helpful. Jake Weatherall might be my looper as well when Matt Short does return. It didn't look great the other day, so I think he might fall out of the side for Matt Short. So yeah, there's a few things to think about, especially with Lynn improving at the top of the order. Don't know if it'll stay there though, but it should. Imagine that, Lynn and Matt Short. That'd be good fun. But there you go, guys. We'll leave it at that. Have a looper, sort things out, get yourself sorted. Said that twice.